Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. It's Wednesday. You've made it halfway through the week, and everything is downhill from here on out. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate everybody, no matter where you are, how you're listening.
Welcome.
All friends around the states. All that daggone loop got us again. Dylan Sinn on the program today. Neddenriep from the Indy Star will join us. Rick Bozich as well. Looking forward to that. Plenty to get to as we're getting closer and closer to college football season kicking off, officially this weekend, as a matter of fact. But for most of us, it'll be next week, and looking forward to that. Basketball season just gets closer as well each day. Not really starts off until around October, but that's not that far away when you consider that by the time football gets started, it's really about the beginning of September. So literally 6 weeks away from, in essence, the start of basketball season with Hoosier hysteria and all of that stuff, and the different things like that going on around. Because when football kicks off, if you recall, we started talking 6 weeks prior to that when fall camp started, how close it was to football season started. So it's not that far away from everything going full bore. So then you're going to have college football, basketball, soccer, the WNBA still going, I guess, wrapping up at, man, it gets busy. Very, very busy. It goes from being busy to being extraordinarily unbelievable. Appreciate everyone jumping on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. For those of you that aren't listening on radio on great stations like 97.7 ESPN, The Rap down in Evansville, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB, the voice of the region, up in Hammond, Chicago, and across in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. Make sure you keep it tuned to all of these stations after Indiana Sports Beat Radio for upcoming content. Like Sports Rush with Brett Rump on the Fan. Brian down there in Evansville as well. Mr. Carr, how are you doing today? Over in St. Louis, Mr. Howell down in Southport, and plenty others. Mike, Tim, hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. You can do the same if you're following along on YouTube as well. Looking forward to talking to Rick Bozich today. As always, it's always fun to see where get us a sense of how things are going on in the region. The Dallas Cowboys dealing with some weird stuff this morning. The Oxnard Fire Department and were called to the Dallas Cowboys training camp home at the River Ridge Residence Inn Tuesday because of a fire in one of the guest rooms. The fire was contained to that room and was empty at the time. Nobody was injured, according to the team. Fire personnel dealt with the situation. Players and coaches were preparing for their late afternoon walkthrough after a nearly 2-hour practice earlier in the day. Cowboys take over the entire campus of the River Ridge Residence Inn for players, coaches, front office staff, and all that stuff. No non-Cowboys personnel stay on the property during the team's stay there in California. Why they go to California? I don't know. You know what? I guess that they were getting ready to play a preseason game. They host the Los Angeles Chargers on Saturday at AT&T Stadium in their final preseason game. There you go. So they were there on one of those scrimmage deals. So weird how crazy things happen, man. But we're closer and closer to the NFL season kicking off as well. How are the Colts going to do? Well, we'll see. High school football underway, baby. That's got to get underway, this weekend with live games, I believe. Talking to Kyle Neddenriep today. We'll get a much better grasp on that as well. What is going on in your world? What are you looking at this weekend? What are you looking to do as far as sports? Don't forget tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Oh, man, don't let me forget this. Last call for some of you to play in the Never Lose Hoop golf outing taking place at the golf club at Eagle Point. That is tomorrow. Noon start, but 11 a.m. check-in. Don't forget, 3 different hole-in-one contest opportunities, a $10,000 one and 2 $5,000 hole-in-one opportunities for this event that benefits area kids and their families affected by cancer. There will be IU athletes there, IU basketball players there. I know Anthony Leo has a team, Luke Goody's has a team, Ian Stevens is playing as well. There are other IU athletes. I think there'll be coaches there. You can sign up as an individual or as a team. You have lunch coming to you. You have a sit-down dinner coming to you. You get a T-shirt. There's the silent auction that will contain tons of IU memorabilia, including a signed football by Kurt Signetti. So thanks to Brian Haynes and Coach Signetti for that, and things like that. You could win the first signed football by Kurt Signetti. I'm not sure that there's one out there yet. How about that? So there's the information for those of you. Just go to events.golfstatus.com. Again, that is events.golfstatus.com, events.golfstatus.com, and just search Never Lose Hoop, and the information will pop up without question. So appreciate you. And if you can join us, please do. It's a fun time on top of that. And the weather still incredible. I played the course yesterday. Great front nine for me. The back nine, not so well. But that was because of not paying attention, I guess you'd say. But it was a fun day. Out on the course is in great shape. So looking forward to getting out there and knocking it around with some of the peeps. So hopefully we'll have a great time. I'm sure we will, with the weather expected to be great and fun. How are things going with our Nick? How are things going with you, Nick? You said you heard the cars running on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway yesterday. So I guess they've got a tire test or something going on out there.
Things are looking good here. It's always a good day in Speedway when you hear something going on at the track. But yeah, yesterday heard sports cars, and already hearing sports cars out there this morning. And I was just looking on Connor Daly's Instagram story, and he had just posted 15 minutes ago of looks like a BMW M3 or M4 GT3 or GT4 car that he's driving for some team, filling in a spot for, it looks like. So they are there. I'm not sure if that's, IMSA or if that's just like one of the World GT challenges or something, but it's active here in Speedway, and I love it.
Got the cars running, baby. Anytime the cars are running circles there at IMS, it's a good day, especially if you're a race fan, which there are plenty of those in the state of Indiana. I'm surprising they don't have another major race at IMS during the year. You've got Indy weekend of May, of course, which takes the entire month, but then you have NASCAR. But
I think they're working on getting a major sports car event. They've had this the Battle at the Bricks, the World GT Challenge, and now they're getting IMSA there. They're doing, I think it's a 6-hour race here at the end of September. Then when I was working there at the IMS for like the 500 and whatnot, I was talking to some of like the staff there, And a lot of them believe that they are working their way up from 6 to 8 to 12. Then there was some talks and, conversation about, the good old 24, make it a real crown jewel. But that is, of course, always a big discussion. But I do know like 8-hour and 12-hour race here is definitely in discussion because it's really easy just to bring in portable lights just for, a temporary race like that. So,
Heck yeah, baby. Let's do it. Line it up. All kinds of sports fans in the state of Indiana, whether it's basketball, race cars, football. They are as good of NFL fans as there are out there. So Indiana is just full of sports fans. And if people don't get that, they just don't get it. That's another reason why Indianapolis is the greatest place in America and possibly the world to host a sporting event. It just is. It's built for it. It prides itself on it. It has proven itself. It does a great job time and time again, and it doesn't matter the sport. It doesn't matter the event, whether it's a Super Bowl, the Indianapolis 500, basketball, NBA All-Star game. It just doesn't matter. They love it and they handle it. College football championship, NFL Super Bowl. I mean, there's nothing you can throw at Indianapolis and it doesn't just knock it out of the park. So, yeah, for the few of those, Dave asking about Fish, if he has been on this week. No, he's Don Fisher starts with us this coming Monday, the 26th. So looking forward to Don restarting but that means the season's here, baby. So because at the end of that week is game 1 for the Indiana Hoosiers on the football field, and he'll have a new partner back in the booth, a new but an old familiar one in Buck Sewer rejoining him, handling color analyst duties as Rhett Lewis was hired away by the Big Ten Network. Not a big surprise. Rhett is just a great asset and just great at what he does. That's part of the reason why he was already on the NFL Network. So, but you have a familiar voice back in the broadcast booth. A lot of people were sad to see him go when he retired the first time around. But Buck Sewer, former offensive line coach, I believe, for the Hoosiers back in Bill Mallory's days. He probably coached multiple positions, but former assistant for Coach Mallory back in those days. And I think this is going to be right up his alley as well with the coaching staff of Coach Signetti. The style, I think he's going to love it and have a great time calling this stuff. So, yeah. And Dave says, yeah, he's looking forward to hearing what Fish has to say about football team. He is pumped this season. Dave, you can take it from me, man. He's going to tell you that. I'm telling you, he's going to say the same thing I've said. I promise you, because this is not anybody pumping the air up somebody's skirt. I don't do that. If you listen to this show, you know that's not me. I will say what I think. If it's great, I'll say it's great. If it's not, I'll say it's not. But there's just nothing that does not lead me in a good direction for this team this year. But we'll talk more about that throughout the day, throughout the broadcast, and more with Fish when he joins us on Monday. Up next, Dylan Sinn joins us from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We'll be back with that and more after this.
Segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
Howdy, howdy. How you doing, Mr. Sinn?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So cannot complain with this weather. So
Good day,
Sure.
sir.
we go live
Morning, Jim.
or go back in about 30 seconds, by the way.
All right, buddy.
$20 seconds. And 5.
Segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with us. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined now by our good friend Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How's it going, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Jim.
Always a pleasure, man, and always a pleasure, Dylan. And we're closer and closer to the start of football season, a busy time for you. You're still dealing with the tin caps, and but the onset of the high school football season up there in Fort Wayne, but also covering the Hoosiers, the Boilers, and Notre Dame. None of those teams will kick off in week 0. Fortunately, they're still a week and a half away,
Right.
but pretty close, man. It's upon us.
That's right, and I'm really looking forward to the start of the season. I will be in Bloomington for the Florida International game, which will be a lot of fun. I'm just really looking forward to seeing the Hoosiers on the field for the first time under Kurt Cignetti. I think it's going to be it should be a really nice atmosphere. I think that's one of the things that the Indiana has really tried to do this offseason. It is put together a game day atmosphere that's just a little bit better than the ones they've had in the past, just kind of more fan friendly. Just that's one of the things that Kurt Cignetti and his staff have really made an effort is to really kind of revamp the experience of going to an IU football game on the field, seeing a better product, but also just kind of everything that goes around going to the stadium, right? Different food options. You're gonna have Buffalo Louie's at the game this year. Different kind of game day environment, different experiences you can have while you're there, and so I'm really excited to see all the work they did this offseason kind of be put to the test. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and just to kind of see what they're trying to turn Indiana into a big time football program, and like a 21st century. This is a football program that competes and does what big time football programs do, both on the field and off. And I'm curious to see how that goes. I think obviously there's probably going to be some kinks early in the season, but it should be a different experience right away, and I think that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, the good thing is if you're talking about Indiana, their schedule allows them probably to make those kinks that you talked about, probably to work through them a lot easier than a lot of teams. You have the 2 non-con games just to open up, which are in essence glorified exhibition games, not just they're supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a way for you to do just what you said, to work the kinks out before you take on a heavier opponent in UCLA. UCLA having their issues right now, so that should give Indiana that same deal, because another reason, that's Indiana's 3rd game, UCLA's 2nd game, and we know that you make a lot of improvement after that first game, especially after that 2nd game. So Indiana should be ahead of themselves in regards to that. So that should give them a slight advantage there. But I'm looking forward to the potential of covering a team that is expected to win most of the time. Doesn't mean that they're going to all the time, but just to have that expectation, for fans to have that expectation, that is a major difference as opposed to going into a game and hoping, well, man, this is probably going to be a loss, or, shoulder shrugs. That's not the case as of right now. And I know that we haven't snapped the ball yet, but from all that we have to see, it's a pretty good indication of what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just going to be a little bit different. Like the last couple of years, obviously, for most of 2022 and 2023, it felt like every game you were kind of just holding on for dear life. I mean, I go back to when IU played Western Kentucky in 2022, and they were losing much of the game and then came back and won a last-second field goal. And they played Akron last year, and they won in 4 overtimes. It's like, I don't think that your non-conference games this year are going to be particularly dramatic, right? And you should be able to win those games going away, and they haven't done that very often recently. Even a couple of years ago, they played Idaho. They were down 10-0 at halftime against Idaho. Remember, like it was one of those things where
Akron
wasn't
Akron, they almost lost.
Yeah, 4 overtimes, and they had plenty of chances to lose. They needed a genuine comeback late to win that game against genuinely one of the worst teams in the FBS. That's not just a MAC team. That was a bad MAC team. They went 2-10.
And everything you're saying is just an exact reason of to be in that position that many times of potentially embarrassing yourself. Wow. That's the wrong place to be. You've got to be in a position to where those opportunities are actual opportunities to have beaten someone that you probably shouldn't have beaten. Right. And we'll see if Indiana has climbed to that or not. But yeah, they certainly, we do not expect them to be in that position, especially now.
Exactly. That's kind of, I think, one of the bigger differences about this team is that there's an expectation going into the season. You're going to win some games relatively easily, right? Like, I expect them to win their 3 non-conference games without too much trouble, right? I don't know how many games in the Big Ten they're going to win without too much trouble. Maybe the one against UCLA. I don't think UCLA is going to be good, but that's another one we don't really know. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's just you're not kind of scratching and clawing and fighting just for every single win. There are some games in the schedule that you think, we got that one, and maybe we'll turn out to be wrong on that. I don't know. Maybe that we will struggle. We will see a struggle against Florida International or Western Illinois or Charlotte. I don't think so. I think that would be a significant disappointment, but I guess we'll have to see. And so it's one of those things where you would want your dramatic games to be ones that are in the Big Ten, that are against teams that are solid. Like if you face Nebraska or Maryland and the game is close down to the wire, that's not the worst thing in the world. Those are good teams, right? So I think that's kind of at least a level up you can expect this year. Is your dramatic games are against better teams. I think that's something you can ask for.
And you have to win more of those because Indiana has also had a penchant for losing close games.
Yes.
I think 6 one-score games. They were 0-6 in those one-score games, I think. Cignetti made mention of it at his opening press conference. Yeah. And JMU was 6-0 in one-score games. And so a little bit of bravado there. But it shows the point of that stuff is not lost upon him. Right. Every single detail. That's one of the things that I think that is going to change the fortunes of Indiana is his attention to detail. And he does not get consumed with being a football coach. If they have a 3-hour scheduled practice, but they get done what he wants them done in 2 hours, they're done. There's no other coach in America that I've ever heard say that. Every coach takes every practice that they can, every minute of every hour that they can, thinking that just by being out there that it matters. And I think the players will respond to that, but we'll see, because that's a lot of confidence.
It is, absolutely. And here's one thing that I'll say is that one of the reasons that I've been optimistic about IU this year, just because they obviously brought in a significant amount of talent. Chris Snetti is obviously a good coach, but one of the things that has made me confident this year is that they could easily have been a bowl team last year, right? Like they were 3-6 going into that last stretch of 3 games. They all 3 of those games were 1-score games. And I think IU might have led all 3 of them at some point in the fourth quarter, led or tied at some point in the fourth quarter. And they lost all 3 of them, right? Penn State, Michigan State, Purdue. All 3 of those games they could have and or should have won. I think they probably should have beaten Michigan State. They should have beaten Purdue. And they had a real chance to go on the road and upset Penn State. And they didn't. I thought there were significant coaching mistakes that led them to not winning those games. And so I do think that there is going to be games this year where you have it's close in the fourth quarter and you go win the game, right? Like, and again, they did that against Akron last year. They came back and won. Okay, you did that against Akron. Congratulations. But I do think that it's one of those things where there was the talent on the team even last year to be better than they were. And I think that if you take a lot of the guys that came back, Donovan McCulley, Carter Smith, all the guys that came back on defense, which is not that few, right? And you put them on a team with all these transfers that Chris Signetti brought in, all this talent he brought in, I think you have something going there. And so I think that's something that gives me confidence, is that this team was not that far away last year. You add significant pieces to it, and you add a coach who probably is going to do a little bit better in close games. And now you're going to win some games on the margin, even if you hadn't upgraded the talent, you would have won some games on the margin anyway. I think that gives me confidence.
Absolutely, and I agree with that 100%. And then you talk about, or we can talk about the fact that once that this season, it'll take this season, but if they have the success this season that potentially is there for them, that will instantaneously, to me, change the recruiting fortunes. We're already talking about a guy in Juju Lewis potentially landing at Indiana, who the former number 1 recruit in the 26 class, now in the 25 class. And his season has started, by the way, in his opening game. I think they had a win. His Carrollton Trojans battled the Woodward Academy War Eagles. That was on ESPN2 last week. During the season opening win for Lewis and his Trojans, he had 126 yards in the air, completing 9 of 15 pass attempts. Nothing spectacular, but he threw for 3 touchdown passes on the night. So you see that when they get close to the end zone on his team, they go to him and through the air. So that was a 24-14 win. But during the broadcast, Lewis was asked about his current state of his recruitment, and he responded by saying he's locked in with USC, which I'm sure that makes Lincoln Riley feel good, especially with all of the talk out there about Colorado, Indiana, even Auburn, and especially with one of the national guys coming out and saying that he thinks that Indiana is in the lead. Well, that probably just spurred USC to dump a few more dollars in his pocket, maybe.
Yeah, that could be. And I do think part of it is going, like, Indiana has a real chance, because I don't think USC is going to be particularly good this year. Like there's not a whole lot on that roster. I don't know if people have really looked at that. I think that, like, the assumption is like, oh, USC, they have talent because they're USC, and they have some good players. Like Zachariah Branch is a really good player. They have some guys, but they're not that good of a team. I don't think. They might go 7-5 or 6-6. And
defense is a huge problem for them last year.
It is a huge problem for them last year. They brought in a new defensive coordinator, but they didn't bring in a huge number of, like, impact transfers, and not a huge number of, like, 5-star freshmen who are going to play right away. Like, they haven't recruited that well on defense since Lincoln Riley got there. I mean, it's all relative, right? They're recruiting at a top 20 level, but nothing special. And so it's one of those things where USC and IU don't play this year, but there's a chance that if you get into the season and IU starts really strong and USC kind of sputters a little bit, which they might, because they have a tough early season schedule. They play Michigan early. They have a couple other games that I think they're probably going to lose early on. It's going to be a tough start for them. And so if IU starts fast and USC starts slowly, I think the momentum again might build on Juju Lewis and just, hey, we really have something going here. Come check it out, And again, part of it is that he has a relationship with the guys on staff, but these guys have relationships. Like that's these are guys who have been around the football a long, long time, and they have relationships. And so it is one of those things where IU just needs an opening. And I think if they start strong, USC kind of stumbles out of the gate, there's your opening.
Absolutely. And not only that kind of just plays right into what I was thinking as far as the recruitment. Indiana has done great as far as the transfer portal and all of that. Recruiting has just been okay, but I don't expect that to change until there has been a change of product on the field. Now, and if things are happening the way you just talked about in the early part of the season, let's say they go 4-1, 5-1, 6-0, my gosh, you're going to see that change fast. People are going to see that, oh, okay, it's changed there. So now I want to be a part of that. So there's some of the better in-state recruits. Oh, I want to be a part of that. Or if you're landing, if you can land a Juju Lewis, which is crazy, I get it. But hey, the possibility is more than there. Then that leads to other players that want to be a part of that. Whether it's the receiving core, running backs, offensive linemen, it all higher tide raises all boats, and that's what that situation would be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where Kurt Cignetti has been on, I'm sure he's been on the recruiting trail talking the same kind of bravado that he has in public. And it's one of those things where I'm sure players are listening just because of who he is and what he's done. But it's one of those things where you can't really take him at his word until you see it on the field, right? It's the same thing fans are doing, right? It's like there's excitement, there's interest, but are you going to show it on the field? Can you put it on the field and back up what you're saying? And if he does, then I think you start taking him significantly more seriously as a recruiter. You say, oh, I was interested. Now I want to know more about this. Now you said you were going to win and you did. Tell me more, right? Like this, you've done this at a place that people didn't think you could do it. And so I think that the schedule, again, we've talked about it before, sets up well for a fast start for Indiana, and that's going to bring attention on them in a way that they haven't had since early in the 2021 season. And so, and before that for a very long time. So it's a really exciting time for Indiana. And it just is, the anticipation of it, I think, is we've had this entire offseason where he's been talking the way he's been talking. And you want to believe that the changes he made, the players he brought in, the talent that he upgraded is going to make that talk work out. And there's ample reason to believe it is, but you can't know for sure until we see it on the field. And only 10 days left till we get to see it on the field.
Absolutely. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us. We've got more to talk about. Purdue, Notre Dame. How are things going for those guys? We'll find out right after this break here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg.
Man, you're going to be busy, dude. You're going to get the mileage in this year.
Oh, yeah.
Got about 1 minute.
You don't strike me as a golfer.
Me?
Yeah.
I played golf in high school.
Oh, well, little do I know.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I wish you could have joined us tomorrow down here then.
Oh yeah, I actually, well, unfortunately, I would not have been able to even if you had invited me because I sliced my finger open yesterday and I cannot currently grip a golf club.
That would have been worst.
20 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, but no, I love golf. I play a lot. My dad was he is a very, very, very good player, and so he taught me. I never had a lesson. He just taught me.
Go back.
That's
5.
big time.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Hump day, baby. It's all downhill from here. Jim Coyle with you as always. Appreciate you joining us. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us as well. We just finished up talking about Indiana football as the season is 10 days away. Purdue and Notre Dame also going at it as they will also open the season in week 1, as most teams will. Purdue taking on the vaulted Indiana State Sycamores. So they will have, that's about one of the only easy games on their schedule. It gets, you talk about getting downhill in a hurry. Purdue, they're going to have to head uphill in a hurry on their schedule because their non-con games include a trip out west to Oregon State and a home visit by Notre Dame the week before that, which Notre Dame is currently ranked in the top 10. I don't know if they're that good. Notre Dame, that is. We'll talk more about that with Dylan. He would know. Let's go to that direction first, Dylan. Notre Dame, always ranked, always thought highly of, partly because it's Notre Dame, but they don't always live up to that. I don't know, where are they this year? Are they truly a top 10 team this year?
I think they're borderline top 10. I think they're close to it. They have a lot of pieces, a lot of their most important pieces back, especially on defense. They have Al Golden is, I think, one of the more underrated defensive coordinators in the country right now. He had them playing really, really well last season. I think the reason that Notre Dame is expected to be good is because they had issues last year, and those issues were fixed in the transfer portal, right? They had issues at wide receiver, and they brought in 3 significantly talented wide receivers from the transfer portal and a couple really good ones in the freshman class, got healthy. And so they feel like they're going to be better at wide receiver this year. They didn't have a quarterback when Sam Hartman left. They brought in Riley Leonard. They feel like they're set there, right? The defense is, they lost some pieces, but they have a lot back. They feel really, really good about. And so far, they have looked good in practice from what I've seen. They've looked the part. I'm concerned about the offensive line. I think it's a Notre Dame has built its brand over the last decade or so on being a team that just churns out offensive linemen. And it has, like, they've been very, very good. They obviously had 2 offensive linemen drafted in the top 60 of last year's draft, including the number 5 overall pick. But they don't really have ready replacements for either of those guys. They have guys who they like, who are talented, but they who are highly ranked recruits, but they're young, they're inexperienced. They don't have guys who have started. They didn't go in the transfer portal and say, hey, we're going to get a tackle from somewhere that has been really good. So that's a question mark. And so I think we're going to find out right away, because Texas A&M in week 1, that's one of the marquee matchups of in the entire country in the first week of the season. And you have a coach at Texas A&M and Mike Elko who can dial up some different pressures that is going to confuse an inexperienced offensive line. So if they beat Texas A&M, I think that you're going to see a significant surge in these guys are real. And I think that would be a fair assessment. I think that is a significant test for them. And if you go past it and your offense looks decent doing it, you should be in pretty good shape. I think you're going to go probably 10-2, 11-1 if you win that game.
Yeah, but we're talking about a Texas A&M team who was also thought highly of this season.
Yes.
They're one of the SEC teams who are expected to produce, and the SEC has a lot of them as always. But the Big Ten is not keeping pace as far as having. The SEC is stronger this year, and that's a little surprising when you're adding 4 new teams that includes USC and Oregon. Oregon, obviously, a big addition to the Big Ten right now. USC, big question mark. UCLA as well, and Washington coming off of that national championship performance, but this is not that team. So they're not getting the Big Ten, not getting quite the bump that they had hoped. USC is kind of like Nebraska was when they joined. They haven't gotten back to that old Nebraska swagger yet.
Yeah, I will say one thing that gives me. Well, I think the Big Ten is top heavy. I think 2 of the 3 best teams in the country are in the Big Ten. It's Ohio State and Oregon. Those two teams are. It's those one of Ohio State, Oregon, and Georgia is going to win the national championship this year. I don't really think there's much question about that. It's one of those 3. Ohio State and Oregon play in Eugene in October in primetime on NBC, which is probably the biggest single game of the regular season. Unless Alabama turns out to be really good, then their game against Georgia could be fun. But Ohio State, Oregon, for my money, is going to be the best game of the regular season. Should be an absolute blast. Ohio State is loaded. They brought in significant transfer portal talent on top of returning a lot of guys from that team that went 11-2 last year. Oregon did the same thing, went 12-2 and brought in a ton of talent. And I think one of those 2 is going to win the title. And so I think Georgia is a step below them, quite frankly. And so, the Big Ten is going to be, on the whole, I think not quite as good as the SEC this year. But I don't think the SEC is that talented top to bottom either. There are teams that are going to struggle in the SEC as well. So I'm fascinated. And it's funny, you talked about Nebraska there, the USC being the new Nebraska, where you come in and it's a team that you expect it to be pretty competitive right away, and they might not be. Nebraska might be pretty dang good this year. They're
going to be led by a true freshman quarterback. That's the only question about them.
Yes.
But I agree with you. I expect improvement from Nebraska. That's why that game that's on Indiana's schedule, the 7th game, a home game, is a winnable game. But that's going to be seven games into the year, 8 weeks into the year.
Yes.
You're humming at that point. Your team should be at optimum performance. So we'll have a great idea of where Nebraska is at that time. And I agree that they could be one of the much improved teams of the conference.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Rule, Nebraska's coach, he's done this before, right? Like his kind of the way he builds his program is he tears it down at the beginning. They're usually terrible in his first season, and then his second season is generally much, much better. And they weren't terrible last year. They probably should have been a bowl team last year. They didn't get it done toward the end of the season, but they had some significant one-score game bad luck last year, kind of like Indiana did. They should be better this year. They do have a true freshman quarterback, which is tough, but they have a really, really good defense, like almost an Iowa level defense that could carry that team. So, and they're going to build momentum early in the season, kind of like Indiana is with a relatively soft early schedule. So I'm fascinated by Nebraska this year. I think it might be finally the year where they get back to being a top 20, top 15 team at some point. And so I think that game where Indiana hosts them on October 19th, if Indiana is 6-0 or 6-1 or even 7-0 at that point, I don't think 7-0 is likely. You probably slip up at some point. But if you are 7-0 or 6-1 and Nebraska's coming to town and they're 6-1 or 7-0, you feel like that's a game that might be on game day, coming to Bloomington. So it's exciting to consider the possibilities, not only Indiana, but Nebraska coming back and being closer to what it usually is.
The day that happens, you know that Kurt Cignetti has truly turned Indiana into I hate to call it a football school, but when game day shows up, things have really and truly changed. They have been here on a Thursday once for that Ohio State game that opened up the season, back in 19 or 20, whenever that was?
17.
17. Oh, even further back. So holy
and
cow.
IU was ahead at halftime in that game. Don't forget.
Aren't they usually?
Yeah. Against
the
Ohio
third
State.
Quarters.
Against Ohio State, they have been a couple times the last several years. Yeah, it was what,
I think they led after 3 quarters, didn't they?
Yeah.
21-20?
Yeah, that's right. And then Ohio State scored, I think, 29 unanswered in the fourth quarter because it was 49-21.
That's what you call flexing.
Yeah,
they just flexed a couple of muscles and boom, booyah. But yeah, so looking forward to how that goes. And then Purdue, of course, there's some, I don't want to say pressure because he's only in his second year, Ryan Walters. But man, when you have all the change that there was in the Big Ten, even new teams like Washington, but they have a brand new coach, Nebraska in their second year, Indiana in their first year of a new coach, all of these teams all picked above you. That can't be, there's not a lot of confidence in this Purdue team, it seems, by the media. And I'm not sure what their fandom thinks right now, but the media does not have a ton of confidence in Purdue being much better than they were last year. Part of that, it has to do with their schedule. I'll give them, because they have a wicked schedule. That's their own stupid fault. You should have scheduled all those games, man. You play in the Big Ten already. What are you doing scheduling Notre Dame? What's Notre Dame's a great game to have, but that trip to Colorado State, if you want an idea of what they're going to be like, their first game, Colorado State's first game of the year, by the way, is against Texas in week 1. So you can get a bird's eye view of what Oregon State will be like, or Colorado State will be like. But yeah, Purdue is, I don't know. They've got a tough row to hoe this year.
Yeah, I mean, they do. And we've talked about it before, is that their Big Ten schedule is also difficult, right? Like they play Oregon, they play obviously Penn State and Ohio State, and they even have to go to Wisconsin, and they host Nebraska, who we just talked about. Like, those are games that if you win one of those games, you're feeling happy, right? It's a Oregon, Ohio State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Notre Dame. That's 5 games right there that if you win one of them, you're probably happy. And so it's a very other outside of that, you have to be perfect in order to make a bowl game, basically. And so it's a very tough road for them, as you said. I do think they get 2 wins in the non-conference. You beat Indiana State, you beat Oregon State on the road. I do think that those are probably wins for them. The question for them is going to be health. I think last year Hudson Card, their quarterback, was very, very good when he was healthy. I think one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, but he wasn't healthy all that often. He was he kind of got battered as the season went on and struggled to stay on the field. And he got bigger this offseason. He added muscle in an effort to stay healthy the full season. And I think if he does, that they'll be a competitive team. It might be kind of like Indiana last year, where you lose a fair amount of close games against decent teams. There's going to be some game along the way where they give someone a scare, I think, because they are decent. They have talent on this roster. They're not going to just roll over and let people run over them. Even if they finish lower down in the Big Ten, it won't be because they were terrible. It'll be because their schedule was tough. So I do think there's going to be at least some game, kind of like Indiana against Penn State last year on the road in Happy Valley, where you're going to look up in the third quarter and, boy, Purdue's winning this game. How did that happen? Well, it's because Purdue's a decent team, right? There's question marks going into their game against Notre Dame. They have a couple of starters that are going to be out week 1 against Indiana State. They have a bye in week 2, and then they play Notre Dame in week 3. And so what they've kind of targeted is, they're going to have these starters out for week 1. They're hoping to get them healthy during the bye week and then play against the Irish. And so I think that is going to be an interesting kind of, how does that work? Are those guys going to be healthy? Are they going to be ready to go? Because those are some of the more important players. Nyland Green, the cornerback from Georgia, their prize transfer portal pickup, he's not playing week 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, you gotta heal up just to get beat up by the Irish. It's a tough road to hoe going into the Big Ten season. Then you start the Big Ten season, the Boilers, that is. Yep. So they're gonna have if they start out the year at 1-2, that's going to hurt. They're going to have to be looking uphill the rest of the season as far as making a bowl game.
That Oregon State game that you were talking about in Corvallis on September 21st, I think Oregon State is not going to be very good this year. They were good the last couple of years. They lost almost everything from those teams because they're no longer in a power conference. The coach left for Michigan State. But that's still a team that has some talent there. And so I think that turns into one of the more important games in the schedule for Purdue. If you go on the road, you win that game, you start 2-1, you feel pretty good you feel okay about where you're at, that you can go and maybe and maybe have a chance at a bowl game, right? So I do think that that's going to be a very important game for them. But coming off of the Notre Dame, so you have to play Notre Dame, then you have to go on the road to the West Coast. That's a tough back-to-back, right? It's probably a good thing they get a bye right before that, but it's a tough back-to-back, especially with some guys already banged up. So I'm interested to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, and not only that, you get beat up on those two games, like I said, and then you start the Big Ten season. Yes. So, and it goes right into it, and there's just no let up from there because everybody you're going to play, I doubt they're going to be a favorite against many of these teams. Maybe at home against somebody, depending on how the season's going for, say, a Northwestern or a team like that. But it's going to be an uphill look for them for this entire season. And this could be if things don't go well again, that cannot help recruiting. Obviously, it doesn't help in a lot of things in what Purdue is trying to do, which would kind of play into the having gotten rid of these divisions now of Indiana fans saying, well, how'd you like to be us every year and playing Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, yada, yada, we could see some proof in the pudding from some of these former Western Division teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that usually the Big Ten schedule is going to be difficult going forward just because the preponderance, how many good programs there are in this conference now. You're going to usually play some combination of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, Oregon, Washington, Wisconsin's always good, Iowa. You're playing some combination of those teams. But this year, Indiana just isn't. Indiana's playing Michigan and Ohio State, and they kind of dodge everyone else, right? You have Washington on the schedule, but they're down. Not sure how much, but they're not going to be quite as good as they usually are, that kind of thing. So it's Indiana got a break in year one. Purdue did not. And so it's like you said, for 1 year at least, it is Purdue getting a taste of what IU had for all those years, is that you had 3 games in your schedule where it was like, well, probably not winning that one. And so Purdue has several of those. Purdue has 4 of them. And so I do think that it's a bad break because it's year one at Purdue. It was a rebuilding year because of everything that left after Jeff Brom departed. They had so many seniors in Jeff Brom's last year. Walters comes in, you're starting to rebuild. You install your new system. You got better as the season went on. You had a good offseason in the transfer portal. You felt like there's some momentum here. But you would have liked to have taken a step forward record-wise in year 2. I don't know if that's possible because of their schedule, even though I do think they will be a better team than they were in 2023. It's just a tough break for them and tough break for Ryan Walters.
Dylan Sinn, Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Thank you, sir. Look forward to it next week and then almost every week thereafter on the weekends.
Absolutely, Jim. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. We've got more Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming up. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, Rick Bozich joining us as well. Back right after this.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
A little late there. My bad.
It's all good. It wasn't bad.
I lost. I had it and then I lost it. I'm like, oh, shit.
We're back at 58-20.
Got about 1 minute.
Twenty seconds. And 3.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to talking to Rick Bozich in a little bit, and hopefully Cal Neddenriep will be joining us here in a few moments, because he's got several articles out right now that I'm looking forward to talking about. One of which is kind of cool: cars, golf clubs, Chipotle, how area high school stars would spend NIL. We'll get into that. Predictions for who's winning state championships this year in the 6 different classes for Indiana, and I think they're super top 25. The top 25 ranking best in the state in football or in-state recruits for the 2025 class as well. So plenty of great stuff that he's got out at the Indy Star. You can go catch that there, but hopefully we'll get to talk about that with Kyle, and hopefully he'll get to join us, because high school football season is upon us. It is here and ready to go. And so there he is. Speaking of the devil, Kyle Neddenriep joining us. Kyle, I'm just singing your praises. Multiple great articles out right now at you have in the Star. I'll save the good one, the fun, for last, with the cars, golf clubs, Chipotle, and how area high school kids would spend NIL money if they had it. That's a fun one. But you've got the predictions out for who you think is winning the state championships. No pressure there at all, by the way, to start the season by having to name those, and then we'll cover the teams that you don't pick.
I know, man. I didn't want to do it. I said that, hey, can we hold off on that till week 5 or so? But no, I kind of went with probably the chalk for the most part, I would say, on most of those picks. But yeah, take them for what they're worth, which is not a whole lot. But I think there are some, there's obviously the teams I picked are very good. Obviously not all that's going to come to fruition, but I think at this point in the season, you could make a good argument, probably for all those championship, at least the teams to be in the championship games. As we look at it right now, things will change, injuries will happen, and we'll find out some teams are better and some teams we picked aren't maybe quite as good. But yeah, I think it'll be fun to see how all that shakes out.
And actually, some things that jump out to me is looking in 5A quickly. Some Southern teams. This is some old school names here, man. You're throwing out East Central, Bloomington North, Castle. These are schools that have been around and that are not always been there over the last couple of years. But man, East Central, they had a run where they were just so dominant for a while. Then they fell off, but look like they're back a little bit.
Well, East Central will be, they're moving up to 5A, so it'll be, a jump for them. They're the, of course, the reigning back-to-back 4A champs, and they lost Josh Ringer, including and a lot of other really. I mean, they were super talented last year and probably could have competed, with some 6A teams. I'm not saying they would have won it, but they were legit really good. So I don't know that they'll be. We'll see. I mean, they've been traditionally really strong, so we'll see how they do in 5A. I think they'll compete. Obviously, I picked them to win their sectional at least. But I would say Bloomington North's a team I like. I think Decatur Central, though, they made the state finals last year and lost, but I think they'll be a team that'll be right there again this year. And then Bloomington North has a quarterback named Dash King, which is an awesome name for a quarterback. And he's a really good player. I think he's got over 4,000 career passing yards. So he'll be good. I think the north side of 4A is interesting too. You got Maryville and Valpo and, teams that have been really good over the course of history as well. Warsaw will be, I think, a really good team that actually dropped from 6A to 5A this cycle. So, they've been playing against really good teams and beat Fort Wayne Carroll last year, which was a 6A finalist 2 years ago. So yeah, 5A is really interesting. I think you could make an argument for a lot of teams. That's been a fun class just because we've seen some teams like Decatur Central be able to make the state finals, where in the old system with 5 classes, they were just a small 5A that would run into teams like Ben Davis in the sectional, and they're basically half the size of Ben Davis. So it's allowed teams like Decatur, like Bloomington North, like some of these, smaller 5As in the old 5-class system to have a chance to make a deeper run, which in football, as we know, it's such a numbers game. If you're half the size of the school you're playing, especially a public school, I mean, it's hard to overcome those types of numbers. It's not saying it can't be done, but it's just that much more difficult, especially in a numbers sport like football. So 5A has been a good, the going to 6 classes, I would say overall has been a good thing looking back at it.
Yeah, I agree, because generally, not always, but generally the lot of the 6As come from the Indianapolis metropolitan area. And to get a great mix of the state, you don't have to go far. 5A, boom, we're talking Maryville, Valpo, Warsaw, Lafayette, Jeff up there in the north, Decatur Central, East Central, Bloomington North, Castle, like I just mentioned in the south. That covers a lot of area there. And 4A is the same. New Prairie, Mishawaka, Leo, Lebanon, kind of scattered throughout the north, and New Powell, Bishop Chatard there in Indy, but Martinsville, Evansville, Wrights. So you've got a great mix of schools or areas all over the state with these other classes.
Yeah, if you want a class to follow, other than, a lot of people, of course, follow 6A, but, 4A this year is going to be really interesting to me. Chatard moving up from 3A, can they make the run? They've never done it in 4A. They've only been in 4A, I think, 3 years maybe total when they've moved up previously. Haven't been able to get all the way to a state championship in that class, but they're such a dominant program at the 3A level. I think they can make a run at it. But then you got, you mentioned a lot of those schools. New Pal's ranked number 1 going in the state in 4A. Of course, they've been, powerhouse previously and, haven't fallen off. They've actually gone to 5A and won a championship, now back in 4A. And they're a team I think was a little young last year that's going to be building. But anyway, 4A just as a whole is really looks pretty fascinating to me, as far as just a lot of different teams that are better than they were a year ago, with the chance to to make a run this year. So that's a class I think will be fun to monitor throughout the season.
And then you've got some of the top recruits in the state. and recruiting wise, I think it's going to be very interesting after this season to see how area teams like Indiana, do they make inroads with in-state guys? And if they have the season that I'm expecting, I think that they will. Will Purdue, if they have a tough season, which they very well might with the schedule that they have, they're already picked to finish last in the Big Ten. Does that hurt them? Because they've kind of had an edge over Indiana in in-state recruiting here of lately. And will there be a change there? So there's a lot of interesting things that are going on in that regards.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of things that'll shake out, more so with the 2026 class, I would say, and below, as far as that goes, do those. And I'm going to be looking at some of those top players too here in the next 2 days. So we'll have some more out on the 25 class is basically, those kids haven't signed, but they're almost all of them are in the books as far as having verbal commitments. And, I think that, so it's yet to be seen. Purdue was in on some, they were really close. I mean, John Anthony Hall from Fishers was, I thought Purdue was going to get him, to be honest with you. And I think that was a real possibility. And then he ended up going to Stanford, really liked it, ended up committing to Stanford. They missed out. There's a couple other players I thought they were close to getting in state. And I think Purdue's doing a good job, in that, and they did a good job in that class, but just maybe missed on like that highest end talent like a John Anthony Hall, who I think is going to be really good in college. But, it's just it's hard, as we've talked about before, Indiana a lot of times does well on guys, and then all of a sudden they'll get a big offer somewhere else, and they're going to Ohio State or whatever. So that you've been in that position before. But Evan Parker, who they're getting from Carmel, I love him. I think he's a beast. They got him early. He didn't have a ton of offers yet at that point, mostly MAC schools and IU. But he got in early, and I think he committed in February, I want to say. So he was early on. Davion Chandler from Lawrence North, they were able to flip him from Illinois. Very good receiver, confident player, catches everything. I think he would probably be – I think he'd play inside or out. I don't know enough about all that to know what they'll do with him. But, he's a guy I think can help you with his speed and pass-catching ability. So, yeah, I mean, the 26th class will be kind of where, how does IU and Purdue do in those classes? Offers are out. There's good quarterbacks in that class in the state, and who knows? I mean, we'll see what happens there, but that'll be something to watch throughout the season. You're right. I mean, it kind of depends on how the season goes to a certain extent too. Like, can you kind of create some momentum? And that's really important early in a coach's tenure. I think that's, not saying it's year one, but, early year 1, year 2, that's where a lot of the momentum is built. And from recruiting's it is kind of like a freight train. If you can get on and get a couple of guys in and then, keep adding to that, it does create sort of a buzz and momentum, especially within a specific class. It's recruiting sometimes about the class that you're coming in with, because those guys really get to know each other.
Absolutely. And you've got another piece out right now that's pretty fun, to be honest with you. Cars, golf clubs, Chipotle, how Indy area high school football stars would spend an NIL check. And I will say I'm pretty proud of these first couple that I'm reading about. Is it Ifa Adioba from Pike and Mason Alexander, both from Hamilton Southeastern? Ivy says he'd spend it on his mom and then invest the rest. He'd make sure my mom is straight and then invest it to everything else. There is no way in hell that answer would have ever come out of my mouth when I was 17 or 18 years old. I'm proud of that kid just because, and I don't even know him, but I'm like, man, that would have never even been a thought in my head when I was an immature me at that age. But it shows you the difference in today's kids. And then Mason Alexander, it's either going to be for my sister or my mom. Love it. You got to love that. I just know it has to be one of them. So I'm not looking to spend it on myself. All the people that think that the NIL is so bad, I don't think that they don't see enough of the good side. Anthony Leal is a perfect example of that. He quietly and without fanfare paid off his sister's student loans with
Mhm.
with NIL money like last year. I don't even know what that figure is, but I bet it was a pretty substantial number, to be honest with you. But that's a pretty cool thing to see. But some of these other ones are get a little funny. Gabe, how you say that? Arabolis? He's going to get him something to eat and take his family out for sure. He loves him some Chipotle, which I found funny. If you're going to take the family out, man, you could do a little bit better than Chipotle. Enoch Atawago. All right, you say that one.
Atawagbola.
There you go. Atawagbola. Now that I said it, it's easy. It's easy for you to say. Atawagbola from Avon, probably Yeezy slides. So yeah, it
was a fun question. We did that as part of our super team photo shoot, and just we broke that one out because there were some good answers in there. Normally, when I asked the players, the first answer was a lot of times like I invest it, I'll save it, which I love that. That's part of and then they would expand on that, like what they would maybe do, like Mason Alexander. And Mason's got he's going to Pitt to play defensive back. I wrote about him last year. He lost his dad when he was younger, probably when he was about 12 or 10 or 12, maybe a little bit younger than that. And so his mom and sister, they're really close. So his answer was really heartfelt, that he get something for his mom and his sister. And there's a long story about I wrote about him that they were kind of without a home for a while. So that was very, I knew he would have a good answer for that. And then, some of the other ones pretty funny. Ruth Chris and Chipotle and, going
Tesla.
to
You got to get a
Tesla.
car. You got to get a car, and it's got to be a Tesla because this gas is a little too high.
Davion Chandler said he's going to give back to Lawrence North, which I thought was cool. But most of the time, then I was kind of like, well, some of them, okay, what would your second check go to? And then they would, I'm getting a car. That was always a lot of it was that. And as a guy who drove a 1986 Mercury Lynx as my first car, I completely get that.
1974 Chevy Nova, baby.
So the pain.
With a homemade sunroof that somebody who had it before me had made and put in there. It was like it collapsed upon itself. It was crazy awesome until my dad saw one of my friends stand up out of it yelling at some girls once, and he caulked it. He caulked it closed. Man.
Wow. Yeah, I remember I sold that Lynx probably in 1997. And I met this guy out at a grocery store parking lot, and he had his wife, and they had a little baby. And I'm like, man, I don't know if this is going to be great. And he's driving in the parking lot, and there's all this blue smoke, as normally coming out of the exhaust. And he's like, does it always blow out blue smoke in the mornings? I was like, thinking like, yeah, the morning, the afternoon, and so sold it for $225, and it got me around a little bit, but yeah, those first cars are always something.
Hey, is this Friday night things opening up?
Yeah,
off this Friday.
Should be a fun night. I'll be at Cathedral Ben Davis on the west side, and number 1 against number 10 in the state rankings. And that game was played in the regional last year. Ben Davis won, of course, barely, 27-24. And of course, Cathedral without Danny O'Neill now at quarterback, who's going to be starting at San Diego State, which is pretty exciting for Danny. And I'm excited to see how he does this year. So we'll see how that goes for him. But Cathedral breaking in a new quarterback, so they'll be a little bit. They have good talent, obviously they always do, but maybe took a little time for the quarterback to get his feet wet. But yeah, it should be fun. Westfield and Center Grove is another big one up here on Friday, so I'm looking forward. I can't wait Friday night. If the weather is anything like today, man, it's going to be awesome. So hopefully it is.
Well, it's gonna warm up, unfortunately, but it's not gonna be too bad. Kyle Neddenriep, the Mindy Star, thank you, sir. Appreciate you as always.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
Cal Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow and, of course, following that great coverage that we just talked about. Up next, Rick Bozich joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with that right after this break.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Good day, sir.
How are you, Jim?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm okay.
If you decide to grow a beard, someone has some killer beard oil in this morning. Roasted pumpkin, toasted marshmallow, and vanilla bean scented. It's like candied sweet potatoes on his face.
Ruby would like that.
I never thought about that. She'd be chasing herself all day trying to find that to eat.
There you go.
What's new in the Ville, man?
I don't know. It's kind of quiet. Just wait until
Calm
next week
before
for
the
football
storm.
season. Yep. What's new with the Hoosiers? They lost the offensive lineman. That's a big loss, right?
Yeah. But, unfortunately, that stuff is going to happen. It happens to every team somewhere along the line. I guess better to happen early than late, the day before a game, or such at least gives them some time to work in their replacements, alter the game style.
I saw he said they were going to rotate 3 guys in 2 spots.
Yeah. I'm sure that somebody will, I would think that over the course of time, someone will kind of start to edge ahead and grow and
perform
all of that.
Perform the way they're supposed to.
Exactly.
Are the students back in town? Is the traffic back?
Man, I stay away from town unless I have to go in town.
Okay. You do really?
I do. And I don't have to go
About
in there
1 minute.
Because I'm 20 minutes south of town. So yeah, if I don't have to go in, nope. Not doing it.
How far south are you, like, of Bloomington South High School?
Oh, I could get there in probably 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Not very far. It's just like being out. It's just like living in Greenville.
30 seconds.
Getting a haircut today.
You are, or Ruby is?
I am.
10.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. You've made it to the halfway point. It's all downhill from now, and that does not include my next guest, Rick Bozich. He always takes it uphill. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying this last week. Cooler weather. High school football obviously starts here as it does in Indiana, and there's actually a college game on Saturday, right? Florida State and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's one. There's like 5, but that's the only decent one, I think.
I'll watch that one because Louisville's first ACC game is against Georgia Tech, so that'll have some meaning to it. And the next week, it all gets started.
Yes, it does, and looking forward to it. And area teams, I know Louisville is Jeff Brom leaving Purdue and now in his second season at Louisville in the ACC, giving him a little bit easier row to hoe, but it's still going to be tough sledding because you have to play teams that are trying to do the same thing you're doing. You got Cristobal at Miami who's trying to get Miami back. Dabo Sweeney who's trying to get Clemson back to what Clemson was, and they start out with a tough game opening their season against Georgia. So, but is Louisville underrated? Is Indiana underrated? Is these are two programs that don't generally get a lot of love from national media anyway. Louisville has had their success. Indiana obviously has not, but it's been up and down. The ACC not getting a lot of love, so that doesn't help Louisville much.
Well, I mean, Louisville's 26th in the AP poll. I figure that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
You know, they had a great year last year when they went 10-1, but they did lose the last 3 games to Kentucky, Florida State, and Southern Cal. They've got some uncertainties on the offense a little bit. They lost 2 really good running backs to the NFL. And Jeff Brom's been fairly, I don't know the right word, not critical, but disappointed in their performance in their 2 scrimmages in his post-game media conversations about how the defense is, specifically last Saturday, the defense dominated the offense. But their schedule set up where they play Austin Peay and Jacksonville State the first 2 weeks and then have a week off, so they have time to figure it out. Indiana, I mean, I saw yesterday, I think on CBS Sports, that 2 guys picked them 11th in the Big Ten, 1 picked them 12th, and 1 picked them 13th. I mean, that's pretty optimistic, actually, for a team that's, won 3 conference games in the last 3 years. So you can sense that Curt Cignetti's messaging is getting through to people. You know, he's being real positive about the team. So no, I don't think they're underrated either, but you know, we'll find out. For both these teams, we were talking before we went on the air, Indiana lost the offensive lineman, Kidwell, and Louisville lost its best receiver to a broken collarbone in its scrimmage on Saturday. So, yeah, every team suffers injuries, but that's one way the better teams remain dominant is they have the depth to withstand the injuries. So that's one thing I keep my eye on.
Yeah, and for both of those losses, while significant for each team, obviously, at least it's happening earlier. Only a month and a couple of weeks prior to the opening of the season. That's better than it happening in the game or the day of, etc., where they can't prepare. This way, they can at least both prepare and alter things with their to filling those roles.
No doubt about it. Yeah, Louisville last year lost. I remember I think it was at Pittsburgh. Louisville lost a guy that one of their best offensive linemen during pregame warmups. It was rainy at Pitt, and we're doing some drills, and I think he tore his ACL and missed the rest of the season. So that was a really hard one for them to overcome. And you know, I looked at the names of the guys that Cignetti was talking about filling in for Kidwell, and one of them was Bray Lynch, and another one was I think Evans, maybe, is that his name? He's like a redshirt sophomore and a true sophomore, but it's like you got to find out if those guys are any good, if they can play, because they're going to be in your program for a couple of years, and if they can, then you can build around them, and if they can't, then you got to get better guys.
And you can probably, I hate to use the word, hide them within the offense when you're using 3 different guys. So
right,
you bring them in at certain times where you're going left. If they're on right, you're going left. So it's not quite as critical. But you want to find the guy that can be that guy out of those 3, because you're going to need someone that you can lean on, because when you have to go right, you have to have the, no pun intended, the right guard in there. It's but I'm sure that if you don't have at least depth to cover an injury, then you've got bigger problems.
And you have to have guys that can hold up under a pass rush some. We've seen the hits that IU's quarterbacks have taken over the last 4 or 5 years, whether it was Penix or Sorsby or Tuttle or whoever, Peyton Ramsey. IU's quarterbacks take a lot of hits, and that's the one thing you don't want to do if you're really as strong a believer as Curt Cignetti is in Rourke. Job one is to keep that guy clean. You don't want him to go down, because I think they're pinning so much of the offense on his success.
And these teams now, with the 12-team expanded playoffs, everybody has an eye on the playoffs. It's no longer thinking, well, we're not Ohio State, we're not Michigan, we're not Alabama, saving these 4 spots for the Big Ten and the SEC and maybe an outsider here and there. Well, now everybody has a chance. Even the watered down ACC that has not been as good, they're probably still going to get a couple of teams in to the 12-team playoff, maybe. But teams like Indiana or Louisville, where that used to be just completely crazy talk, or not so much for Louisville, but more so for Indiana. And I'm not saying that it's not crazy talk for this year, but there has to become a point to where that is now within the realm of achievability.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana's not there yet for sure. They've got some building to do to get there, but Louisville's a team that, a year ago, if there would have been a 12-team playoff, I'm not saying they would have made it, but they would have been in the conversation. And who knows, at the end of the year when they lost that game to Kentucky, might have knocked them out of it. It might not have, but you're going to have more teams in the power leagues thinking that they've got more to play for. And if you take one loss, you're not automatically eliminated. They always talked about last year that every game matters or whatever it was. It didn't really matter because once you lost one, if you were a certain team, you weren't going to go to the playoff. Now you might be able to overcome that. So yeah, it's going to be fun because not only is it going to be, it's expanded from 4 to 12, but you got 4 teams that are going to get buys. The first 8 teams are playing those games on campus sites. So that'll be interesting. And it's a new world. And it seems to be fairly wide open this year. You're hearing a lot of people are touting Ohio State. A lot of people are touting Georgia. A lot of people are touting Oregon. A lot of people are touting Texas. It seems to be a lot of teams really believe they have a chance to win the national championship.
And I'm wondering if in the future, say a team like Indiana, whose obvious hopes will be to become part of that, being able to be one of those 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th teams that make the playoffs one day, if that will lead them to getting away from the 3 non-con games they currently have to adding at least one against a more formidable opponent. Whereas the SEC definitely has to do that because they're only playing 8 conference games to begin with. But
right.
A team like Kentucky, I'm wondering, man, is there a possibility that a rivalry like that could be rekindled in the future and kind of kill 2 birds with one stone without putting them in too much of harm's way? It's not like you're scheduling Alabama or Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't see that happening with UK because they're already playing Louisville. So they're not going to add another game against a team from a Power 5 conference, even Indiana, considering that Indiana's probably one of the teams you'd like to schedule in a Power 5 league because of the struggles of the program. But, I think IU needs to stay with the schedule the way this is an ideal schedule for Kurt Cignetti to break in. The 3 non-conference games are all winnable. They're all at home. And then they've got 5 Big Ten games at home and only 4 on the road. They only play 4 road games. So that's one thing he needs to take advantage of this year because he gets a break right out of the box. He's not playing Penn State. He's not playing Iowa. He's not playing Wisconsin. His Big Ten schedule is a lot better than it could have been and a lot tougher than some of the ones Tom Allen and Kevin Wilson faced.
6 out of his first 8 games are at home. 6 of the first 8 games are at home. And that's huge because every one of those are winnable games. And that's me saying that now without even seeing the ball snapped. But those all are winnable games as far as you look at the schedule, because with Washington, complete redux, all that, Nebraska will see that Nebraska could be the toughest game of those, which I'm expecting Nebraska to be improved. They've got the true freshman quarterback. How's that going to work out? We'll find out. But Indiana is Kurt Cignetti he could not have had it done any better. I've said that a million times, but at the same time, they have to achieve here. They can't. This is not something that they can go 50-50 on. They have got to achieve. They've got to be, to me, they have to be 5-1 after 4-2 after the first 6 games would be a disappointment to me for Indiana if they're not able to get 5 wins out of those first 6 games.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
On them. I know it's putting pressure on them, but hey, I'm not here to make it easy, baby.
I just think back, and I know it's not the same team. I know it's not the same coaching staff. I just think back to last year, and they were life and death to beat Akron. So until you actually see them go out on the field and dominate some people, I'm hesitant to predict big things until I actually see it. It's critical for them to make a good first impression in that very first game against FIU. They're a 21-point favorite, I believe. And you're going to have a lot of people that are going to come into that game because it's the first game of the year and they've heard all the positive hype coming around the program. And they've got the new amenities at the stadium with different things going on and new food items on the menu. They need to have people come to that game and leave saying, A, I had a great time. That was fun. I want to do it again. And B, hey, I kind of like this coach. I kind of like some of the things he's doing. That's their chance for the first 2 games.
Absolutely. And
I just see the bracket is out for Atlantis.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the next segment. I just saw that as well. So this Nebraska-Indiana game, this could be a spectacular game if things go the way that we think that they will for Indiana, or they could for Indiana. And if Nebraska is improved and their true freshman quarterback produces the way he possibly could, this could be an absolute great game in Bloomington, TV-wise, fan-wise. I don't know. Obviously, the time for it is not scheduled yet, but man, oh man, that would be a tremendous night game in Bloomington.
Yes, it is. And Indiana gets Louisville the first game, huh? Wow, that's interesting. I've already switched over to basketball.
It didn't take long, baby. Well, we'll take a quick break. Rick Bozich is with us from WDRB.com. When we come back, we'll talk about that as the bracket for Atlantis basketball tournament is out. That and much more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington.
Oh,
there's some pressure.
Awesome.
There's some pressure on Mike Woodson.
Oh boy. Oh man. Yeah, it is, because Louisville is definitely much improved.
Yes, they are. When is that tournament? Is it around Thanksgiving or before then?
I know it's in November is all I know, but how much, what teams, where, when, how about when? Oh, quit it. During the Thanksgiving holiday. I didn't realize IU's men's and women's team were going.
Yep.
Are they the only one? I won't be there. It's too damned expensive.
Is it?
Oh my God. It's like $800 a night for a room or something. What is the cost? Accommodations. Yeah, they don't have any Airbnbs on Atlantis, baby.
1 minute. 30 seconds. Ten. 3.
This segment is brought to you by the Rusty Gator.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with us. Our good friend Rick Bozich from WDOB.com joining us. And the battle for Atlantis brackets are out. I did not realize Indiana's women's team also participating this year, and they are. But the men will be taking on the Louisville Cardinals. Rick, to start this thing off, and you said it in the break, man, pressure right off the bat. As Louisville with 12 or 13 new players through the portal this year, basically an entire new roster.
13 new players. The whole roster's new. The whole coaching staff's new. The whole video group, the trainer, everything's new.
Has that ever happened in college basketball? 13 new players. I know Rick Pitino has brought in a ton his first year there. But 13 new players?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, everybody's the only person that's there is I forget her last name, but Stephanie. She was the director of operations under Kenny Payne, and she kind of like directs the entire basketball office. She's the only person back. They changed the equipment manager. They're all gone. So, the pressure is on Mike Woodson to win that game because Louisville's won 12 games the last 2 seasons, and they're starting over with an entirely different team. And because of the way IU constructed its non-conference schedule, they don't have a chance for many quality wins in the non-conference. They need to win that game.
Well, and not only that won't be their only opportunity, because if they get by the Cardinals, they will have to take on the winner of West Virginia Gonzaga, who is on their side of the bracket. And then if you look across the way, you've got Arizona, Oklahoma, Providence on the other side. So more opportunities coming. But they come early and often with that Louisville team that probably will be there's no doubt they're going to be way better than they were last year. And the excitement I know is building high in Louisville for them. But man, that's a heck of a start to take on, say, Louisville and Gonzaga, if you can get past Louisville.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it or if you subscribe to The Athletic, but last week, Brendan Marks, who covers The Athletic out of North Carolina, he did his handicapping of the ACC race for next season, and he had Louisville third. He had Duke 1, North Carolina 2, and he said Louisville third. If you look at the players they've gotten out of the portal and how productive they've been at other places, he said he was their pick to finish third. And I know a couple of people that went to watch them in the Bahamas in person and said that they were much improved and very good. So, if you're going to be good, you got to beat teams. And it's a big, I'm sure Louisville views it as a game that, they need that game too for their non-conference, their NCAA resume.
Yeah, Ryan thinks that the bracket could not have been set up, or could have been set up. No, I think he meant could not have been set up any better for IU. It's perfect, he thinks. Now they just have to do the damn thing. Well, yeah, but that's not as easy. That's easier said than done. You have a lot of other teams that, like Louisville, that have added talent. Not only that, there's no way you can prepare. How do you prepare for a team like Louisville? 13 new players. You can't prepare for that.
Well, but they'll have already played a few games before then. So they'll, right? The season starts 2 or 3 weeks before then. So there'll be some stuff on video. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. And I think you looked at last year, Kelsey's team ranked in the top 20 in the country in terms of percentage of three-pointer shot. So that's been an issue for Mike Woodson's teams at Indiana. They're going to have to shore that up, but they're going to shoot threes.
Yeah, we'll see how the defense is changed, because that has been a grave problem for Indiana. Teams that can shoot that three well have been very, very problematic. But that's a heck of a way to open the season, because like you said, last year, Indiana with a few opportunities, and they came up short in every one of those with trying to grow their resume for the end of the year, and they could have used that. That was the difference between making the tournament and not, or doing well and not doing well. And so that a game like Kansas at home, an opportunity that was missed, the game against Auburn in Atlanta, and up in New York against UConn, which no one's blaming them for losing to teams like that. But you have to win if you want to be in the party at the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, I who else do they have in their non-conference schedule? That they got South Carolina at home, and they have anybody else?
You know what? I don't
think they do. The Kansas series is over. They're not in the crossroads anymore.
And Kentucky does not start till next season.
Right. I don't think they have like a top. Do they?
Brought up the daggone Pacers instead.
We're racing.
Not to my knowledge. But surely there has to be somebody on there.
Here we go. They got Eastern Illinois, South Carolina, Greensboro, Sam Houston, Miami, Chattanooga, Winthrop.
No, it's battle for Atlantis. That's where their games are coming from.
Yeah.
So again, winning these games most of them will be critical. They don't have to win Atlantis, but they've got to, at worst, go 500 against the upper level teams.
Yeah, they do. I think they got to come out of Atlantis with 2 wins. Whether they
absolutely
end up finishing, second, third, or fifth, they got to come out of there with 2 wins.
Well, especially, again, you're talking about a team, Louisville, and this is no diss to Louisville, because they're going to be a good team. But this is a team that was put together, in essence, on the operating table in the offseason. I know that Woody went out and brought in a lot through the portal, but Louisville brought their whole new team in. They don't have a Mackenzie Mbako as a core. They don't have returning guys that were starters last year playing. Louisville is completely brand new. And so, man, if you come in and win like that, that is going to give Louisville a ton of credibility, and it's really going to be a ding to Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a statement game for Louisville. If they win that game, they can say, yeah, it'll be a national moment of people saying, look at the job Pat Kelsey's doing, bringing Louisville back. And all the pressure will be on IU in that game.
Well, and speaking of that game, we're already wondering, I'm wondering, what is it going to be like for Indiana? They've got Umar Ballo, Malik Renew, and there's no way that we're not going to see them on the court at the same time for some stretches, I can imagine. I don't see Louisville as a team built like that. No. I think that's a positive for Louisville. Indiana's going to have to chase Louisville.
Yeah, Louisville's going to have outside guys, perimeter shooters. They got a kid who came from Charleston with Kelsey named Ryan Smith, who's a Australian kid who's a really good 3-point shooter. They got a kid who came in from Colorado. I think his name is Hadley, who's a good 3-point shooter. They got, I think, a kid from James Madison, who was the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year, who's sort of a wing who can shoot. I mean, yeah, they're gonna have to match up with them. Indiana, Louisville doesn't have anybody to match up with Ballo or Malik Renew inside, but Indiana has to make them respect that inside presence.
Absolutely. And to me, Indiana has to go to the second weekend of the tournament this year. And to put themselves in a position to do that, this starts right here, because you have to win these games, because for whatever reason, doesn't matter how the season goes, these are going to be looked at the end of the season when they go to pick teams and the seeding and this and that and the other thing. I don't know that these games should really play a major part in it, to be honest with you, because we're talking a 5-month difference probably in play, but that's the nature of the beast. So what if they don't come out of there winning, but the Big Ten is okay? This is still going to hurt them if they don't perform well.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of the rest of the schedule. These are the marquee games. And I think people, you look back at last year, they got beat by Kansas at home. They got blown out by UConn. What was the other game they lost? There was another one.
UConn, Auburn. Was it
Auburn? That was the
Auburn,
one. They
yeah.
got run out of the gym in Atlanta. And then the year before, they had non-conference games against Arizona and Las Vegas and at Kansas. They got drubbed in both of those games. So that's one of the reasons that people have complained about the performance the last two seasons, and it is those marquee matchups. Indiana hasn't performed, so you got to win some of those games.
Absolutely, and it's time. They're in the fourth year of the Mike Woodson regime, and so a lot of talk about when Liam McNeely decommitted. There was nothing in the cupboard coming down the road, and that's my thought on why he probably decommitted, because he just had too many concerns about what was going to be there, and to me, that prompted a full-on blitz by the Indiana staff and going out and doing what they achieved. Louisville was forced into it. But if you get a Louisville guy that can come in and change their fortunes simply overnight, that's again not a great look for what Mike has gotten accomplished at Indiana so far.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how good Ballo and Miles Rice and Kanan Carlisle are. Reports that I've heard out of the summer have been good about the backcourt, especially, and Mbako supposedly has looked good and played well, and we all know he came on and was much better as the season went along. And Renew is a proven guy. Just the thought that Galloway, who's pretty much been a starter the last 2 years, is going to be coming off the bench, shows you that the team has more depth. And Cup started a lot of games last year, and he's probably going to be the 9th, 10th, 11th guy.
Yep.
They've added Luke Goody. I mean, they've got the pieces, but they got to perform.
Absolutely.
See how long it takes to switch. All it takes is one schedule to go, and we drop football.
Oh man,
it's basketball.
Boom, and that is sad, but that is the truth. But it's funny. I was thinking earlier, how much pressure does it put on Indiana basketball if Indiana football has a really successful season? I mean, I know that one has nothing to do with the other, but from a perceptual standpoint, again, talking about a coach that comes into a program that has been a perennial doormat, and if he can turn that into success and do it quickly, man, that tells me that, boy, you should be able to do that with basketball a hell of a lot easier.
Well, it's not just that, Jim. It's look at what Steve Aird is doing with IU volleyball, how far down they've been. And this year's, I think some people are predicting this is the year they make their way back to the NCAA tournament. I saw they got some votes in the volleyball poll. I know he's real optimistic about his team. The men's soccer team is always good. The women's basketball team has been good now for 4 or 5 years in a row and has drawn big crowds to Assembly Hall. So it's not just, if football would make a jump, it's not just
the wrestling program has been ranked.
Wrestling, there we go. I know
in the toughest league that there is.
The IU softball team's gotten better too, didn't they? Made the tournament last year, even after they lost their best player, transferred to Stanford. Didn't they went pretty far in the Big Ten tournament and got in the NCAA tournament? Played down in Knoxville, I think it was. And the IU baseball team made the NCAA tournament last year.
Yeah, so the pressure just starts to mount without question, whether certain people want to acknowledge it or not. It's there, and it's not being created by people. It's just natural. I mean, it's just the situation is creating it. So,
and it's been an interesting summer. I mean, in past summers, they've made players available for people to talk to. They've gone completely radio silent this summer, haven't they?
Pretty much. Been pretty quiet. pretty quiet, which is fine. I'm okay with that. So Yes, IU did win the national championship of wrestling in 1932. But actually, the fact that Angel Escobedo has done what he's done in the Big Ten with that program, I'm amazed, because the Big Ten, but just like volleyball, you mentioned, the Big Ten is the top volleyball conference in the country and the top wrestling conference in the country. And so for those coaches to raise those programs in a league that is number one, that's hard work and success.
Yeah. I mean, it's super competitive all across the board in every sport, and every coach is, under the spotlight, and you got to perform. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that in your fourth year as the coach of IU men's basketball that you should make the Sweet 16. Tom Crean did, and he brought it back from nothing. Remember, it was year 4 when they made the Sweet 16. That was the year they upset Kentucky in Assembly Hall and
without the portal, without NIL.
Won those 2 games out in Portland, and then didn't Verdell get hurt? Verdell was hurt, right? And then they played Kentucky a second time and got beaten in Atlanta, but played them a decent game.
Or Mo Creek hurt his knee.
Okay. Then I thought Verdell broke his leg too. Remember, like late in the year.
Break his leg.
I'm pretty sure.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, one Sweet 16 in 4 years in the portal era is not asking for too much.
No, absolutely not. What's up next for you, brother?
Oh, just getting ready for football season to start, I'm sure. And writing about this tournament in the Bahamas. It's got my full attention. I've been texting with guys in the office about somebody getting a story up on the website quick, and I'm going to write a column about it. So this is why we live here in this area, because can't get enough basketball. Was it last week? Yeah, it was on Friday of last week when Malachi Moreno committed to Kentucky, which was not surprising. I mean, if Calipari had been there, he wasn't going to go there, but Mark Pope has a different approach to recruiting, so he focused in on him and got him.
Absolutely. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow, keeping up with coverage on all things college athletics and more. Appreciate you, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. Man, it has been another fun day. Big thanks to Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star as well, Nick, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, to each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Back tomorrow to do it all again. We'll be up at the Golf Club at Eagle Point studios as the Never Lose Hoop golf outing takes place tomorrow. Loving it. Can't wait. Appreciate everybody on the program today. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.